Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is the California MBA's sort of podcast on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And today we have with us a very special guest, Joe Langer. He is someone who has been in the industry for quite a while. We're very pleased to have him. As you may know, Joe, has been involved primarily in the LOS industry on the software side, the technology side. He was senior executive vice president over at Ellie Mae. He also was at PC Lender and at Blue Sage. He has quite a distinguished career, and we really invited him on here to share his view from his unique standpoint. Obviously as being on the C-suite side of things, he's got a very interesting kind of perspective on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we're glad to have him join us. Joe, thank you for joining with us. We're very glad to have you.
Great. Hey, thanks a lot, Lynn. Looking forward to it.
So, Joe, this whole discussion around diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? It covers so many different aspects of, within the mortgage industry, a lot of different aspects of, the business side, the personal side, sort of the interaction side, and obviously the demographic side. But, from your perspective, as someone who has been, at the upper echelons of management, right? Mm-hmm. What does diversity, equity, and inclusion, what does that mean to you? I mean, what have you seen and how have you seen that kind of sort of shape your perceptions around DEI?
Yeah, sure. And I think my perspectives are from maybe being a team leader versus, I've had senior positions in the past, and I currently do. I'm currently CEO of ReverseVision. However, this is applicable to everybody. I mean, it doesn't matter, whether you're the entry level first year out of school or you've been in the business for a long time. The reality is it's really a stronger business philosophy to have a group of individuals who have a diverse background, skill set, and ability to solve problems. A lot of what leaders do in business is identify a problem, identify an obstacle, eliminate the obstacles, point the team in the right direction, get people to work together collectively and solve problems for their customers or their internal business. And if you think about diversity is, thinking about the different types of individuals who are available for team members. There's different races, there's different, genders, sexual orientations, but there's also different backgrounds. I mean, if you think about it, in a company, you already have different groups. You have your sales team, maybe they're a little bit more extroverted. You have maybe your development team, which might be a little bit more analytical, or your finance team. You might have marketing guys who are very creative. And having somebody who has creativity, analytical skills, extrovert skills, thinking skills, having a group of different people with those, on your team is really a competitive advantage. And so I think the first thing with diversity, equity, inclusion is really think about it and say, does it make sense for us in our business? And I think you're going to walk away saying, yeah, it absolutely does. So you got to believe in it because it is a competitive advantage. Then the question is what is DEI? Diversity is a grouping of individuals who have different backgrounds, different viewpoints, different skills. They might look different, as far as race or gender or think slightly different. And what you're trying to do is say, let's get a group of these different individuals together to solve problems. That's the diversity side of things. Equity is saying once we have this diverse group of people, we have to consciously think about, treating people in an equal fashion. It's not just a pay, but it's respect, it's position, it's really being equal to all parties, and consciously thinking about the equality of needs, because you really want to give people a fair chance. Now, what does that mean? Are we just not equal to different people? Yeah, we might be, but what it probably means is, as a leader, you want to learn how to work with people who are not exactly like you. So it's not we consciously try and do things. We just tend to, be in our own world, and we think the way that we grew up and the places we've worked, and we tend to even hire in our own likeness just because we're more comfortable with that. That's what we know. So in order to really value equity, you got to kind of think about what is it like for different people with different social economic positions, different, backgrounds, different education, different races, and so forth. And people are treated differently based on those different attributes. And so understanding some of the challenges or differences you have is also key to having equity. So it's not just pay, it's really equity across the board, how you're envisioning these people. And then the last piece is inclusion. And what does that mean? Well, I could have a very diverse group. I could be treating them all equally, but if I don't ever ask for their opinions, I'm not really benefiting, right? And so the inclusion side is to consciously think about, do I have the right folks on my team? Do we have different viewpoints? Are we bringing them in to talk, and are we listening to their ideas? And it might be tough sometimes to listen to somebody's idea who is different, who thinks differently than you do. So you have to be willing to step back and listen and kind of consider the different opinions and allow those opinions to be communicated, versus it's the way, my way or the highway. I mean, I really think that leadership style is very past and dated. And I think, thinking about, leveraging your team to their maximum capabilities, is what many leading companies do. And in our industry, I think we'd be even more leading.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because what you're describing is it's diversity as a matter of fact, right? You're talking about diversity as not as you need a certain number of people who look a certain way or a certain number of balance of men versus women or whatnot. I mean, you're saying there's this diversity of personality or thought or knowledge or experience, right? I mean, that's really what you're trying to say. And invariably, yes, I mean, people are going to have those differences. So in your sort of context, you're talking about it as a manager, as someone who's managing a team, right?
Yeah.
And breaking these habits of not continuously trying to surround yourself with people that you're familiar with, that you're most comfortable with, right? Kind of going outside of that box can be difficult, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So as a manager or someone who's leading a team, I mean, how do you go about actually creating a diverse workforce? Because you have that power in your hand to select certain team members or hire certain types of individuals. What would you tell someone? Like, how would you go about building that diverse workforce for yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question, because the question is okay, do we want diversity? Yes, we want it. Well, how do we get diversity? And I think the first thing that folks would do is go, work with the HR leaders and say, let's start recruiting diverse candidates. I mean, that makes sense, right? So let's make sure that we're not always going from the same groups or the same colleges or what we've done in the past, but let's expand that. But also let's not include what worked before too. I mean, diversity doesn't mean pivoting from one to the other. It means including all different sources. So I highly encourage looking at alternative ways of getting candidates in the door, internship programs or other geographies or other things. But once they're in the door, you're not, as the leader of the business, you're not making all the decisions. Your managers are typically making those decisions. And our bias as individuals is to hire in our likeness. It's just who we are. We connect with people who look like us and talk like us, and they went to the same schools and they had the same background. And what I'm trying to do is make the best informed decision for the best candidate. But what happens is my social biases tend to go into that equation.
Right.
And so how do you get away from allowing those social biases to affect your decisioning? And what I've seen very successful in the past is teaching managers how to interview for skill and skillability. The reality is we're all creatures of habit, and we tend to do in the future how we did in the past. So if you can talk with a candidate and identify things they've done in the past that fit your needs, and you can get multiple examples of those, people who have more examples of solutions and areas that they've been successful in, and it fits your business need, you're going to have a better candidate. And an approach that's easy to remember is STARS, STAR. And what you're trying to do is, while you're interviewing, you're trying to ask for a star or two or three. And a star is an example of where they've performed and it fit your needs. So S stands for situation, T is task, A is actions, and R is results. So when you're interviewing a candidate, rather than thinking about, some of the things that might come up from a social side. It's more, we have this job and it has these 4 requirements, and these are the types of things that people are going to be doing. Could you give me an example when you were in this situation? What happened and what did you do? And so you're looking for the candidate to say, okay, the situation was A, B, C, and this is what it was. The tasks that were needed to resolve it were these 3 tasks. I actually did these actions to support those tasks, and these were the results of my activities. And so I'm interviewing with somebody, and I get 4 or 5 good examples of things they've done in the past that would support the job in the future, regardless of sex or or race or anything else. That candidate is going to be a better quality candidate than somebody who gave me 1 or 2 stars, or what actually happens more often than not, they don't have any examples.
Right.
That, I've been doing this and I can tell you about something there, but it doesn't quite fit. And so those are interview cues that would help you, make a less biased decision and get a better quality candidate. Because again, what they've done in the past is probably going to predict what they do in the future. And if they've shown you that they can do it, they're probably going to be a good candidate for you in the future. So if you could acquire diverse candidates and then go through some sort of an unbiased interviewing process, it'll be very clear and obvious who the better candidates are, and that will be a pathway to getting a more diverse community in your organization.
Okay, yeah, that makes complete sense, right? I mean, it's a process of incorporating diversity, within an organization and building teams as such. Well, Joe, thanks so much. Unfortunately, we have such a limited amount of time.
Yeah, sure.
I'd love to have you come back and expand on this, but the takeaway really is this concept of utilizing a methodology, right, that attempts to take out the bias from your hiring process to build diverse teams is really important. So thanks to you, Joe. Really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone who's attending and watching this podcast. We appreciate it. This is Linn Cook. I'm with representing the California Mortgage Bankers Association, and thanks for joining us for our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.